Hi, Pia. Fancy seeing you here.
Fancy seeing you here.
So, what is something that you've read 10, 15 years ago that's still really shaping your thinking?
All right, I'm going to give you three.
Three, all right.
So the first one is I actually came into the public sector having worked in a political office for a few years. And I'm not a political person, but I had, through the time of working in the senator's office, become very good at speech writing. All right, so I can bang out a blog or a speech very, very quickly, and it can be compelling and all the rest of it. But writing, as a public servant, is not political, and it's not a political style of communication. So and the other thing is that the communications, even in public services, quite often get so saturated with the language of business that it becomes meaningless. So one of the first things I read when I first entered the public service 15 years ago, at the recommendation of my boss at the time, John Sheridan, who's still an amazing example and mentor, was a book by a guy called Don Watson called Death Sentence. Now, Death Sentence, so Don Watson was a public servant, long-term public servant in Australia. Death Sentence is a book that talks about how the language of business infected the public domain, public service, but also public domain, so that you can read, the mission statement of three organisations, and not only will they sound identical, they're all talking about innovation and engagement and participation with a value chain realisation, blah, 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 but you'll have no idea what they do. Because of the buzzword bingo. So his book was really, really influential in realizing that, this is serious, Mum. Like, this isn't just mucking around, you can't get away with flowery language. You have to be precise and specific about what it is you do and how you're doing it and why you're doing it. You can't just fluff it up. So that was quite influential. A second one that was very influential was Tim O'Reilly in around 2008-ish was talking a lot about Gov as a platform. So reading his blogs and posts and articles about Gov as a platform created a perspective for me of the notion of not just government platforms, but Gov as a social, economic, technical platform upon which society can thrive. So that definitely was very influential in my thinking of government and my positioning in my head of the role of public sector. It's not just to do stuff, it's to actually be that stable environment that everyone can stand upon and do better. And I think the third one was I read this amazing article, years later actually, by a woman called Catherine Althouse, who wrote in the news about what she predicted would be the impact of separating policy and delivery. And she wrote this as an essay, right? And I only found the essay years later, but I read the essay and I'm like, if they had just listened to her, we could have avoided this whole problem. Because she said up front, because the whole separation of policy, design and delivery was on the back of new public management, right? So reading about new public management was also quite influential. But her article, her essay, which is a research paper, said the problem is we're going to end up with stagnant delivery and stagnant policy because they actually need to inform each other. You need to have your policy settings be dynamic and you need to have your delivery inform what's realistic with policy. And of course, here we are decades later and we're just now starting to recognise the division of policy from delivery as a problem and we're just starting to stitch it back together. So yeah, those are my three.